Tonight we got Carolina and Houston. We got the Panthers -8 favorites here, the total at 43. Massive home dogs here, the Texans plus 340. As I said earlier, I wouldn't suggest anybody picking them, and we can't get involved with Carolina on the money line. So let's call some touchdowns and let's visit some props. Unless you feel like maybe the Texans could cover today. Got Carolina coming in, the number one defense in football, number one in sacks, quarterback hits, number one against the run, the pass, third down, number one in points, and now they got to go to their third-string quarterback in Davis Mills. But Mills could be interesting tonight, could he?
Well, and I think that's the one thing that scares me about taking the Panthers is because the look-ahead line coming into this game was around -4, -5, and then Tyrod gets ruled out, and now Davis Mills is playing. Is Tyrod Taylor really worth like 4 points? Like, I don't know. You know, it just, to me, the amount of shift that we have seen with Davis Mills coming in instead of Tyrod Taylor, I just don't know if Taylor is worth that many points. That being said, I'm not willing to put my money on finding it out, but that's what made me just immediately stay away from it, because that spread is too big for a Panthers team that, yeah, through 2 weeks they've looked good, but again, it's a very small sample size.
Yeah, it's a very small sample size, and they also played the Jets in week 1. So what are you looking at today for like some touchdown props?
Well, and that's the thing. Of the 3 touchdown scores I do have today, 2 of them are on the Panthers, because I do think the Panthers are going to be the ones dictating a lot of the scoring in this game. First one, we got to go with Robbie Anderson at plus 185. I got him at FanDuel. If you look at the trends through the 2 weeks, Texans got beat on some long touchdown passes, both to the Jags and the Browns. You saw DJ Chark. You saw Marvin Jones. Dominic Felton, I believe his name is, with the Browns, is another one that got like a long touchdown score. Anyway, the point is that they were both 30 yards plus, which is right in Robbie Anderson's wheelhouse, because he is such a guy that just does the long bomb type of shot. And I think the stats are a little bit skewed as well. Again, the recency bias of 2 weeks, because if you look at the stats of last year, like the targets and the red zone targets, Robbie Anderson was leaps and bounds above DJ Moore. And for myself, when I'm looking at that, I just feel like the stats are a little skewed. And when you can get a wide receiver like him, who could just basically catch a touchdown like off of one pass, just a deep bomb at plus 185, I prefer to take him over Moore or McCaffrey, who are sitting at minus odds or plus 120 kind of thing. And also just from an odds comparison, like I got DJ Moore last week at plus 210 to score in week 2. Now down to like plus 130, that's too low.
Yeah, that is too low. And, you know, I've been talking to Robbie Anderson for, you know, a couple times, I think, on this show. Is, you know, people in the fantasy community are a little sour on Robbie, of course, the first couple games, but he has been playing more snaps and running more routes than Terrace Marshall. I know people want Marshall to take that step forward, and sure, he's a fine player, and he's going to be a great player in the NFL. And I'm sure, you know, as we get into the middle parts of the season, we could see his, you know, usage grow inside this offense. But Robbie Anderson is that deep threat. And last year, the Texans allowed 11 plays of at least 40 yards through the air. That was just one behind the league high. So don't kid yourself on what you've seen so far from the Texans this season. They just played a Browns team who are, I mean, they haven't targeted any of their wide receivers or pushed the ball down the field just yet. And then they played Jacksonville in week 1. And we did see some big touchdown plays in that game. And particularly, DJ Chark had a nice long touchdown pass from Trevor Lawrence in that game. Okay, what else do you got?
Next one, again, sticking with the Panthers. And this one, I think we talked about this. I think he's a little bit of a fan favorite here at FTN. I'm going with Dan Arnold at plus 450. Those odds are at BetMGM. One of the reasons why I was really encouraged with this was just looking at the Texans defense in the first 2 weeks. They allowed 12 catches and 120 yards to tight ends in week 2 against the Browns, and then 7 for 70 yards and a touchdown versus tight ends in week 1. You remember Chris Manhertz is who caught the touchdown against the Texans. And he's starting to emerge in the offense. He's got 7 targets through 2 weeks, but he's starting to play a lot more snaps as well. And I really think this is good odds for a player, especially when he was with the Cardinals last year. He scored 4 touchdowns on a 4-week stretch last year and was just on fire. So again, I feel like from a tight end standpoint, I would prefer him over Ian Thomas or Tremble, I think is another one that's on the depth chart, has started to see his snap counts come up. Dan Arnold at plus 450, I think is great odds.
Yeah, I think that's great odds too. Yeah, weapon inside the red zone. I don't think it'll all be Christian McCaffrey. I think Sam Darnold, and his touchdown prop is like 1.5. I mean, I think he tosses a couple scores here today, and hopefully to Dan and Robbie, and then we'll be well on our way. So you said you had 2 Carolina guys. Who are you?
I do, and I have one more now, and this one, I was so excited when I locked it in on Tuesday or Wednesday morning. I thought, you know what, I'm going to get ahead of the curve here. And it's Davis Mills at plus 900. I got this at Bet365, but he's still at like plus 800 at FanDuel and other sites as well. So I'd still play him at plus 800 if you're not getting as good of odds as I did with Bet365. And part of the reason why I liked him wasn't just because everybody else is on it, but also just the Panthers allowed Winston to run one in week 2, and Jameis is just not a running quarterback really at all. Like, you know, if you look at his previous time with Tampa, like that wasn't his bag. And they allowed 6 rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks in 2020. That was the 3rd worst in the NFL. Now, I know obviously it's a big step up to the NFL from the Pac-12. But the one thing I did like as well is in his senior year in 5 games, he did rush for 3 touchdowns. Davis Mills did. And in the red zone, you usually see, you know, rookie quarterbacks, when their first read is gone, they panic and they just tuck and run. And we saw it last year. Like, one of the best examples last year was Taylor Heineke in that playoff game against the Bucs. Ryan Finley last year making his first start against the Steelers, same thing. And it also, I mean, one of the things that people love to bring up to me is, it's worth noting, he did run a 4.5 in his 40 for the pro day. So maybe he just scrambles and takes off and nobody catches him on the edge.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. I know we've had a great discussion in one of our Slack channels. I think Elliot, did he sprinkle a little something 50 to 1 for first touchdown?
Yeah.
I mean, why not, right? Why not try that out? But yeah, what you got 10 to 1 or, you know, plus 850, it's still certainly worth a shot. Yeah, I saw that too. I was looking deeper into, like, who is Davis Mills, right? Like, who is this guy? And there were some, you know, positive reports from scouts. You know, I drafted, people thought maybe potentially he could be taken at the end of the first.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't happen, but yeah, 3 rushing touchdowns at Stanford last season. All right, from a prop standpoint, I got a couple too that I'll give towards the end of the show, but what are you thinking?
My 2 props are both Carolina props too. So because initially, obviously, I wanted to bet Davis Mills interception. It's at minus 200. I'm not going to do that. Just because it is going to happen doesn't mean that I'm betting, you know, 200 to win 100. It's just not going to happen for me. That's not how I bet. So instead, I went on the other side of the fence, and I'm taking Sam Darnold to throw a pick at plus 115, because that guy, as much as you want to talk about the first 2 weeks and how good he's looked, 40 INTs in 40 career games. And the Texans have forced 4 interceptions in 2 games. They got Baker to throw a pick. They got Trevor Lawrence to throw 3 picks.
Yeah.
For me, with his track record, and I know you could say always away from Gase now, so, you know, he's better. And it's like, come on. Gase can only impact so many of those interceptions. At least 20 of those are Sam Darnold's fault. So it's a joke that it's plus money for Sam Darnold to throw a pick in this game.
And at least 4 are ghosts, I think.
Against the Patriots,
Against the Patriots, yeah. I like that one, actually. As much as I think Sam Darnold could throw a couple touchdown passes today, clearly, as you just said, an interception per game is something that, you know, we could bank on potentially a pick as well. All right, one more prop.
All right, final one. Guy. Yeah, and again, talking about DJ Moore, I'm very happy with how it worked out last week against the Saints, scoring that touchdown. I think we're going to see a lot more action with him. I'm not necessarily certain he's going to score a touchdown, but he has been used so much between the 20s from Darnold. He has 14 catches in 2 games. So I'm taking DJ Moore over 5.5 receptions at plus 120. And to be honest, I think this game is going to be closer than we think. And I just think for at least the first half, he's going to be heavily targeted from Darnold. And maybe that's kind of why I'm lending it a little bit more to the Darnold interception prop. Just, I think there's going to be a lot more throwing from Sam Darnold than people are betting on, thinking that he's just going to basically hand it off to Christian McCaffrey the entire time. So to get both of those props at plus 115 and plus 120, to me, I just feel like those are the best angles that you could take based on the track records that we've seen and the matchups that we have.
Yeah, I love the Moore one. I like his over yards too, 67.5, but the over 5.5 grabs, I have that as well at plus money. And you mentioned the catches, 14, but 19 targets. Why I like the yards too, I mean, he's so explosive after the catch that he could take one to the house and he can get to that 68 yards. I mean, he's had at least 68 in 9 of his past 13, 1,100 yards in each of the last 2 seasons. And we talked earlier about the Texans and, the 1140-plus passing yard plays that they allowed last season, one behind the league high. But it's clear that DJ Moore is Sam Darnold's guy. It is very clear that he's the go-to guy. I mean, even Christian McCaffrey catching balls out of the backfield. DJ Moore does have more targets, and he plays more snaps, and he runs more routes. He's a big part of that offense. Like I said, Gilles, there's a lot of appealing games here, like intriguing games, I would say. Like you got the Chargers and KC is a high total game here. We have Tampa and LA. I mean, that could be a preview of the NFC Championship game. Those two teams going at it on Monday night, your squad, my squad. That should be an entertaining game as well. The Eagles and the boys. And then the Niners and the Packers on Sunday Night Football. So there are certainly some intriguing games and some high-powered games, like in terms of offense, that we could see Seattle, Minnesota one as well. What are you looking at? Early looks. What catches your eye?
Yeah, the first one is that heavyweight matchup between the Rams and Bucks. And if you're going to give me the Rams as a home underdog, the line has been flipping throughout the week. I've seen Tampa -1, Rams -1, +1. Doesn't matter. If you can get the Rams at plus money, grab it, because I think the Rams are going to beat the Bucks because of the passing offense. Really, when you look at that Bucks defense, I mean, we saw it in week 1 and even week 2 up until Matt Ryan decided to take a big dump on the field. They were carving up that secondary. Stafford had just under 600 passing yards through 2 games, 5 passing touchdowns, but the Bucks have given up 700 passing yards and 5 touchdowns through 2 games to both Dak Prescott and Matt Ryan. And I think Stafford is a better thrower of the football of both of those guys. And that's kind of where I see how the Rams will have the edge, because you can't run the ball on the Bucks. They've only allowed 11 rushing touchdowns since the start of last year. So you could basically forget about trying to think about Darrell Henderson props, or at least over props if he even does play. But I just feel like there's not really a matchup that you can give me in the NFL where if you give me the Rams as a home dog, you bring the Chiefs in, you bring whoever, I'm taking the Rams money line each time.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you there. And they beat them last year. And I know things were different with the Bucks, and it took a little bit for them to get going, but the game happened towards the end of November. I'm looking 27-24. Brady wasn't great in that game. 26 for 48, 54% completion rate, only tossed for 216 yards, and he had 2 picks in that game. This Rams defense is absolutely legit, right? Through the air, on the ground, and then you add Matthew Stafford, and what Stafford is doing with this offense, and we talked about it so much, Jill, on this show, is just basically the words from Sean McVay, that there's no limitations inside this offense with Matthew Stafford and what he can do. So that's going to be a highly entertaining game. I'm unsure about the total. I think it would just be like maybe an offensive struggle despite both of these quarterbacks and the offensive weapons that they have. I don't know if it cruises past the over like 55, 57 points. I don't know if I can truly get there, but I do like the opportunity here with the Rams. And something I was looking at in our pace tools over at FTNDaily.com is Tampa has like a pass percentage of 77%. Only the Jags are throwing more than them, and only the Jags are running plays quicker than them too. I feel like Tampa at some point maybe has to have a little bit of balance, even though Brady can sit back and do what he wants with all of his weapons. But also at the same time, something that you were talking about, which makes me think why they're playing at the up tempo and throwing the football, is that their defense hasn't looked as great as it has last season, right? There's some holes and they're giving up some big plays.
Well, and I think that's the thing, is people look at that game from week 2 against the Falcons and they see those 2 pick sixes and they just think, okay, well, the Bucks romped them. But when you actually look at where the score was in the fourth quarter, it was only a 3-point game. And the Bucks ended up covering the spread as a result. But and I think a lot of the thing about this game too is it's kind of a mirror image of each other as far as how they play and the matchups. But I prefer the Rams secondary over the Bucks secondary. I think Jalen Ramsey is going to shut down one of the two, Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. Yep. And I just think that really Gronk could be a deciding factor. Maybe he might be somebody to consider again to score a touchdown just with his rejuvenation of 4 touchdowns through 2 games. But yeah, Rams money line I think is going to probably be my favorite play to make just because of if you're going to give me a good team like that at plus odds, I'm going to take it every time.
Yeah, and again, I always pump the parlay calculator just to get the best possible odds out there. And you're right, it has flip-flopped a little bit, but plus 105 over at DK is the best. BetMGM has plus 105, PointsBet as well, plus 105. So home dogs here for the Rams. There's a lot of like heavy dogs here. I mean, we got the Falcons plus 120, plus 130. The Saints are plus 130 into New England. The Chargers are plus 246. And the Colts are plus 210. We don't even know who the heck is going to be the quarterback. Some reports that it could be Hundley and Eason in the same game.
Oh, my God.
My goodness. Chicago's plus 260 into Cleveland. Washington's plus 315 into Buffalo. What else? Do you have another dog for us? I mean, it could be a spread. It could be a player.
Well, I do have an underdog, but I'm not sure our producer Tino's going to enjoy it too much when I say
Let's go.
Is that I actually think the Falcons can win this game. I really think that this line is a bit of an overreaction to week 2. And just because I think it was a lot closer of a game against the Bucs than people realize. And I'm not as thrilled with the Giants offense. Like, yes, I feel like the Washington's defense is still strong, but there's just something missing here for me where I feel like I could legitimately feel comfortable taking the Giants as 3-point home favorites against this team. Now, that being said, I am going to probably be looking at Giants touchdown scores in the wide receiver realm because the Falcons have given up 8 passing touchdowns so far this year. That's the worst in the NFL. I think it's the next closest is 5. So probably Sterling Shepard, Galladay. I'd probably be looking at Slayton or Shepard from a touchdown scorer perspective, more so than Galladay, just because I think you'll get better odds for them over Galladay.
I agree. I like Slayton too. I mean, he almost reeled that in week 2 just off his fingertips, but he's that deep threat guy. And I saw Kenny Galladay pop up a hip thing, which, he missed most of last season with a hip injury, but I believe the odds would be better with a guy like Slayton. Galladay's a little bit more known, has been a touchdown beast over the course of his career. Slayton, maybe that deep threat guy. Tino, do you have your mic on? Are you able to chime in here on
he's going to rip me apart here in a minute.
Let's go.
Okay. Here we go. I'm in. You got to give me a sec. I don't expect an ambush every time I run Mean Streets. Every show, someone's got to say something. It's all right. Hey, listen. Just know, Joe's already knows this. I'll be at the game, so if they do lose, I'll be just as miserable as I am right now. At 0-2, as 0-3.
In traffic, too.
In traffic, yeah. Avoid. Hopefully, honestly, I'm pretty good at depicting it. I'll probably leave midway through the 3rd. I'll know it's coming before it happens. But
yeah, but you're there for Eli, right?
Yeah, we're there for Eli. So I only got to stay to half, really. That's really the only point of going. We're staying till half. But you're right. You hit it on the head. I think this could be a golly week. I know he yelled at Jason Garrett a little bit there. Maybe that means he'll get a red zone look. I wouldn't make any guarantees, but maybe that's what he was yelling at, to give him a red zone look. But it's okay, guys. Picking against the Giants is normally the right thing to do, especially when they're favorites. I don't know why they're favorites, but it's a completely
I'll tell you what,
different
if you've done it so far, you've won money in week 1 and week 2. Yeah, Gilles, you know what? The Galladay call is definitely interesting, and a lot of people thought that he was ripping Daniel Jones, but he was just yelling at Jason Garrett. Maybe they do find a way to get him more involved, right? Far too
Bane
well
of my existence, man. Bane of my existence. I'm so glad he's gone, and that's saying something with Mike McCarthy there. So, just it's a poop show in Cowboys coaching land.
On the way out, speaking of that, would you lay the juice on the? I mean, you're not this type of bettor. You've already said it too many times, but Dallas minus 190. Is this a game that you're just going to avoid altogether and say
that's an Eagles money line play all day for me? And part of the reason is not just the fact that I think that they can score on this defense, but this is the type of divisional matchup where I think the Eagles could actually exploit some of the things that they were doing. I think the Niners kind of are significantly, obviously, a better defense than Dallas. But I think they limited them so much that I think people are now soured on the Eagles offense, whereas I think they can still exploit Dallas. Like I think Dallas Goedert, for example, is going to score a touchdown in week 3 against the Eagles. So for me, if you're going to give me plus odds for an Eagles team that is, maybe a little bit under the radar here, I'm going to take them because first off, there's 2 things. One, I generally don't bet for the Cowboys ever, just because I'm more of the emotional hedger. Like I would gladly pay a unit if it means that Dallas wins the game. If not, at least that way I took some money away from it.
Fair. Yeah. And +4 right now for Philadelphia. And, if you watch that game, I'm not saying that you didn't, but if people are looking at the box score in San Fran and they didn't give up a whole lot, the Eagles actually did pretty well. They dominated that first half, and it was just some rookie coaching mistakes, which is going to happen with this team. But Nick Sirianni just got a little bit too cute on the one play. I mean, they were like on the 1 first and goal, and they 4 plays that they ran, and the 4th one was some ridiculous Philly special garbage that was just pathetic. I don't
Philly
understand.
special needs, man.
Yeah, no kidding. And it cost them. And then that was, to me, the turning point in the entire game. But, still that they hung around with those 49ers. Gilles, always a pleasure, man. You are absolutely a baller. Fantastic. I love talking to you on Thursdays. Make sure you check out Gilles on Twitter, GDog5000, and check out his shows. You will be richer because of it.